I also want to say, because I forgot to mention at the beginning, that my name is Trudy. Jack always points out that I introduce everybody else and forget to introduce myself. So you kind of got the picture. I am the founding teacher at Inside LA. And thank you. And the other thing that I want to say to you is that we're not going to actually take a break. So now I want to, it's my great pleasure and excitement and joy to introduce Sean Korn, who is with us for the first time at Inside LA. I heard Sean teach once at Wisdom 2.0, and I feel like I'm still vibrating from all her energy. It was fantastic. Sean is an internationally acclaimed yoga teacher and activist and public speaker, and she has been teaching for 25 years. She's got tons of DVDs, and she recently wrote a book that I haven't read yet, but Jack loved it. It's called Revolution of the Soul, and it came out in the fall of this year, 2019. And Sean has, she's been on the cover of 40 magazines and countless media outlets. But the cool thing about Sean is that she has really chosen to use her really very big platform to bring awareness to global issues of social justice and sex trafficking and HIV/AIDS awareness and generational poverty, animal rights, many, many beautiful causes. And Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, whom some of you may have heard speak, said about Sean, I loved this, she boldly confronts issues of privilege, race, and justice that yogis and meditators too often bypass, starting where it matters from the inside out. Sean goes beyond lip service that our liberation is bound together and offers up her own journey, backward steps included, as an invitation to each and every one of us to walk our own path of liberation. And when I asked Sean, what would you most like me to say about you when I introduce you, she said that what is most important for her, for you to know about her, is her tremendous commitment to service, to justice, and to organizing the communities of wellness, like Inside LA and the yoga communities, to organizing those communities to work together to dismantle systems of oppression and to take more conscious action to break down the barriers that divide us and create so much suffering in our world. And she's going to talk with us about how we can begin to dismantle those systems within our own bodies. That's really beginning at home. And how we can begin to see the ways in which we unwittingly, unintentionally participate and even help perpetuate some of those systems of oppression. So thank you, Sean. Really happy you're here.
You go ahead and stand up, please. It's a lot of me. Yeah. Go ahead and stand up. Just take a deep breath in. Exhale it out through the mouth. Do that again. Take a deep breath in. This time add some sound as you exhale. Ah. One more like that. Inhale. And ah. You're going to separate your feet hips width apart so you really feel the foundation, feel your groundedness, the relationship that we have with the physical world. And then inhale, bring your arms up over your head. You're going to interlace your fingers and turn your interlaced fingers upside down towards the ceiling. Okay, take a deep breath in. And you're going to exhale and just turn your torso to the right. Just hold here, but take another deep breath in. Stretch a little higher, then exhale, face forward. Again, inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, turn to your left. Hold here, but take another deep breath in. And then exhale, face forward. Bring your palms into namaste at the heart. Bring your arms around you and interlace your fingers. You're going to interlace your fingers and then lift your interlaced fingers up off your buttocks, squeezing the shoulders towards each other. Good. And just take a couple of deep breaths here. Notice if you're holding the breath, which is our tendency. Yeah. Again, inhale. And then exhale. Going to release the arms. Inhale, bring your arms up over your head. Take your right hand and grab a hold of the left wrist. Stretch the arms up. And then as you exhale, you're just going to drop over to your right. To your right. Yeah, that's it. Good. But notice if you stop breathing. Just deepen that breath. Push into that left foot and just stretch through the whole left side of the body. Good. And then inhale, come up. And switch. Grab a hold of the left wrist. You're going to stretch up, your right wrist. And then exhale. Whatever side you didn't just do, do. Just breathe into any sensation that you feel in the body. Any points of tension. Good. And then inhale, bring both arms up. And then release your hands down at your sides. You're going to take your right ear and just bring it towards your right shoulder. Just drop the right ear towards the right shoulder. Let the left shoulder pull away. And again, closing your eyes, just eradicating that particular sense. See if you can assign a quality to the sensation that you feel between your ear and the shoulder. Tense, tingly, prickly, numb, wooden, dull, stabby. Bring your breath to that sensation. Let that shoulder pull down a little bit more. And then bring your head back to neutral. Drop your left ear towards your left shoulder. Let the right shoulder pull down the back, or rather down towards the side. But keep pressure on that right foot so you're not just dumping into the side of the body. There's some stability. And again, breathe. Every time you inhale, you take in nutrient-rich oxygen. Each time you exhale, you release the carbon dioxide. The practice of breathing is purifying, stabilizing on the central nervous system, allowing us to come back into our bodies, come back to neutral. And then opening your eyes. You're going to put your hands just in light fists. And I'm going to ask you just to gently tap at your chest. Down one arm. Down the other arm. Good. On your belly, just gentle tapping. Moving down your thighs. Maybe a little harder on the thighs. Yeah. The front of the body represents the conscious. The right side is the masculine, so it represents the energy, the archetype of the father. The left, the archetype of the mother. If you can, go a little bit lower. Yeah, maybe go to the back by your calves. Yeah. Good. And then travel back up the hamstrings on the buttocks. That's it. And then just shake out your hands. Yeah. Just shake it out. Good. Take another deep breath in. Exhale it out. Do that again. Take a deep breath in. Exhale it out. Good. Now go ahead and sit. So I'm Sean. I'm a yoga teacher. I've been doing this for a really long time. Teaching yoga, that is. Practicing yoga as well. But I want to share with you a story, and within the story, I'm going to set a bunch of different kinds of context that I'll break down later on. When I first started teaching or practicing yoga, I was around 18 years old. And I'm 53 now, and this would have been back in New York in the 80s. It was physical. The practice, I had no relationship to spirituality. I had experienced childhood trauma. I suffered from anxiety, and I practiced yoga simply just to feel better in my body. So for the first many years of doing yoga, yoga was about me, my health, my wellness, my experience, my happiness. But inevitably in time, there's a shift that happens. The practice moves from the physical to the emotional, where the body releases enough tension that you begin to experience a level of vulnerability. Vulnerability that ultimately can, with the right guidance, with the right support, lead to a sense of surrender, which can also be a relationship with God or love or whatever you want to call it. And then in that trajectory, something really quite remarkable happens. Not for everyone, of course, but I do believe that with diligent practice, it's inevitable that there is this understanding that our liberation is actually bound, and that there's a sense of hypocrisy to continually say we are one without actually doing something about it. So the practice moves from the me to the we, from the individual to the collective, without ever denying, though, that the individual informs the collective. And so at some point, service became really important to my practice. Now, at first, it wasn't, Spirit has an interesting way of putting you where you need to be, but I wouldn't say it was intentional or altruistic when I first got involved with service. It was more superstitious in that after years and years of practicing yoga and making the commitment to become a yoga teacher, and I remember my father saying to me, furious that I was going to give up my entire life and put my attention on becoming a yoga teacher, and I said to him, I will never make any money at this, but I will live the rest of my life happy. I will wake up every single morning, and if I get to teach one person, if I get to teach them how to breathe, how to be in their bodies, how to feel, that will be a complete life. And my father said, you're an asshole. And now the irony is, by the way, that later on in life, my father became a yoga teacher himself, so. Yeah. But, so there was a period of time where, of course, I was teaching yoga, and I was making no money, but I was very, very happy. And then there was a shift that happened, and suddenly, when you're in your purpose, or in my experience, when I was in my purpose, I did start to make a living. And all this abundance started coming my way, and I had never experienced abundance, in financial abundance before. So I had this feeling that abundance is energy, and that if I'm going to continue the flow of energy, I've got to put that abundance back out into the world, that I have a responsibility to do that. And so I thought, well, what can I do? I can teach yoga. It's the only thing I'm skilled at. Who do I teach? I can kind of tolerate young people between like the ages of 11 and 17. So I figured like, okay, that will be a population that I can be in service to. And so my commitment to service didn't start out with this sense of wanting to be even, I put this in quotes, a do-gooder. It was just because I didn't want to stop the flow of abundance. But something really quite remarkable happened. I worked in Van Nuys in a place called Children of the Night, which houses, educates children who have been sex trafficked. They're often referred to as child prostitutes, but I have a real issue with that word. So children who have been sex trafficked. And when I showed up at this shelter at that time, this is many years ago, I thought, great, these kids have had trauma. They could probably use some yoga. I'm sure they have a lot of stress, some anxiety. This will be great. It wasn't. I walk into the room, and what I find is that I met 15 examples of my disowned self, meaning that these children were traumatized, they were pissed, super reactive, had issues with authority, would not pay attention. All the things that I had been, that I thought I had healed, but when I was actually physically in front of it, my first impulse was to split, was to cut and run, and to get so far away from those children. And all of this judgment came up for me around these kids, because so much of that judgment still lived deep within my body. And I remember feeling so humbled when I left, because I did not want to go back. But I knew then and there that I had no choice, because what was happening in that environment is a mirror was being held up, reflecting back to me the places within myself that were still disconnected from my own grace. And until I was able to identify those places that I had rejected, the fractures that existed within my subconscious, then I would never be able to develop the true empathy to be in service to anyone else. And I knew then that there was no such thing as selfless service. I knew that I was going to get way more from this experience than I could ever possibly give. And that began the beginning process for me, going into environments where there's trauma, different from my own, and in some ways mirrored my own, where I was given the opportunity to have to dismantle the attitudes and projections that lived within my body and my awareness that was going to eventually allow me to move with more maturity into what true service is. So this is what I did for a while on a local level. I served, I taught yoga. It's the skill I have. It's what I did. I got better and better as we do. Made many mistakes. And in all those mistakes would continue to challenge myself to learn. At this point now, my role in the yoga community is beginning to expand, and I'm recognizing that I have a platform. And I want to broaden my reach in service and help to elevate the community and invite the community to raise money, to raise awareness, and to be in service. And I'm feeling really pumped up. I've got tools, I've got education and skills. What am I going to do? I decide through the organization that I created, co-created, Off the Mat Into the World, that we were going to create what was called the Global Save a Challenge. And in this challenge, we were raising folks like you we were inviting folks like you to raise $20,000. And if you couldn't pay me, you had to actually physically go into your community and raise this money. But if you could, you would then be able to come with me to another country where we had partnered with grassroots organizations. And we would take that money and fund these organizations, and they would get to show us what they did, etc. I thought it was a genius idea. Raised $4 million, by the way, over the course of 8 years or so. That doesn't matter. So the first country I decided to go to is to Africa, and I want to start in South Africa. And my interest is around HIV/AIDS for a variety of reasons. I want to locate organizations who are doing extraordinary work and figure out a way in which we can help fund and support their efforts. I make my way up to northern Uganda because I had heard that there was an organization, a permaculture farm, that also simultaneously was also housing and educating, supporting young children infected or affected by HIV/AIDS. I had heard that the director of this farm had this seed-sharing model, and as a result of his efforts, had managed to take 7 neighboring villages out of poverty. And there was something about this organization that really intrigued me, and I thought, this might be a good organization to fund, and this might be my great first effort in bringing people into Uganda to be able to learn and work in that space. So I go up to Uganda, I go to the farm, and the children greet me, and they are excited and enthusiastic, and they're taking me all over the farm to show me rather to explain to me what permaculture is, how nothing gets wasted, everything is used. I remember one kid taking absolute delight in explaining how they use chicken poop to paint the fence, the one that I was leaning up against. So that night, we gather for dinner in the main schoolroom. And there's probably around, it felt like the whole community had come out. And there's probably around 30 or so children. And they are laughing and practicing English with me, and it's really sweet and joyous how celebratory it is. And they made a vegan meal out of the food in their gardens. And after a while, the director of the farm comes in. His name is Timbyangge. And as he comes in, the children sit up, and everyone gets very excited, and he stops and looks at all the children like this, touches them, squeezes hands, checks in, how are you? How was your day? He looks at me, takes my hand with both of his, tells me what a sincere pleasure it is to meet me and to be sharing this meal together. He sits everyone down, and then he offers a prayer in his language, which translated loosely to, may we love in all ways, always. And after he's done praying, the children, talking amongst themselves, and it's still very animated. And the director, still surveying the room, at one point says, "Children, I'm curious. I have a question. What happened today that made you happy, excited, proud?" And one by one, the children sit up, and they, with incredible enthusiasm, share all the little magic miracles that happened that day. And they're clapping for each other and slapping each other on the back, and it's really quite beautiful. And he nods and he says, "Wonderful, wonderful, thank you, thank you." And then after a few moments, he says, "Children, I have another question. What happened today that made you sad, angry, afraid?" And the room gets quiet. And I thought, oh God, like someone messed up. Like this is a setup. Like they're going to try to now find out like what went down. And I'm waiting for someone to kind of like, narc. And then something miraculous happens. One by one, the children go around and they share their challenges of that day. I remember one child stood up and shared that he didn't use this word bully, but he had picked on another child and in front of their friends. And he felt ashamed and he was sorry. The child who had gotten bullied shared how humiliated he felt and how alone. I remember a little girl shared that she had stolen food that morning. She was new to the community, and she was afraid that there wouldn't be any food for her that night. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw Timbyangge just give a little nod to the young child sitting next to the girl, and the girl reaches over, takes a little bit more food, just places it on her plate. So forgiveness was asked, forgiveness was received. And Timbyangge, just when they were finished, just looked around the room and said, "Wonderful, wonderful, thank you, thank you." And then he says, "Children, I have one more question for you. What will you commit to for tomorrow?" And one by one, each child sat up straight, and this chant just echoing through the room, all start to yell out, what do you think? Love. Love, 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 love. And the room is just echoing, and the kids are just this mantra, just on and on and on. And I'm laughing, and I turn towards Timbyangge, and I'll never forget this moment, because in that moment, he turns and looks at me, and I've got this big, cheesy smile on my face. And we catch eyes. He doesn't smile. He just looks at me and then turns away. Afterwards, he invites me to go for a walk. And he explains to me what permaculture is. He explains that in permaculture, everything is in relationship. He said that if any aspect of those relationships are disordered, then the balance, the harmony is impacted, and it's not effective. He said, he leans down and pulls like a little seedling, like from the earth. He says, Sean, this seed is important. He said, but not more so than the whole, than the earth that we put this seed in, which is important, he said, but not more so than the depth of the hole that we dig, which is important, he said, but not more so than the amount of water that we pour, which is important, he said, but not more so than the quality of the soul of the human being digging the ditch, planting the seed, and covering it with the earth. He says, Sean, these children experience trauma that you and I will never truly be able to fathom. All of them are stricken with a disease that they had nothing to do with contracting except simply being born. They live in a culture where there is fear and stigma, where there is ostracization and isolation. They come here, he said, they don't trust each other. They don't trust me, not me, him. He said, why should they? He said, what evidence do they have in their experience for equity or fairness? He said, we have to get the kids to communicate their feelings and to identify those feelings in other people. Otherwise, they will act out in other ways, or they will continue to shut down and isolate from society. He said, that's not permaculture. He continues helping me to understand about why it's important not only to talk about the joys and the beauties of life, but also the heartbreak and the loss and the fear and the rage. He says it will teach these children empathy. So I'm taking all of this in, and I'm kind of blown away. Here I am in this village in the middle of northern Africa with this man who I was told had no formal education, dropping down some serious wisdom. Not only dropping it down, but actualizing it on a systemic level. And I'm thinking to myself, this should be taught in all schools everywhere. All children should have this opportunity to communicate and to express their feelings. After a while, Timbiange interrupts my reverie, and he says, Sean, I have a question for you. He says, what are you doing here? And I said, are you kidding? What you're doing is amazing. This is incredible. What am I doing here? I want to help. I've got money. I've got influence. I've got a really large platform with a lot of people who will do anything that you ask. You name me the project, and I promise you one thing, I can make it happen. He nods, and he smiles. And he said, Sean, I know you want to help. I can see you want to help. But there's only ever one answer to that question. Love. He puts his arm around me and he leads me back to the parking lot where my car was waiting. And he said, Sean, stay here now will teach you how to dig a ditch. Come back with love. And he points to my chest like this. He says, and we'll show you how to fill that hole. Anything less, you'll just be in our way. Do you understand what happened in that story? Yeah, do you? Why do you think that Tembyangye asked me to leave? What did you hear? Anyone, you can just kind of shout it out. What did you hear in that story? Me. I have money. I have power. I have influence. I have a platform. I have authority. So who was the problem? Yeah, exactly. Why could Tembyangye not accept my help? And I'm sure he would have loved that money. I'm sure there's 1,000 things that he could have done with that money. But why could he not, based on his philosophy, not accept that money from me? It's not permaculture. It's colonization. It's systemic oppression. Now, it might be doing good, but that doing good is sincerely problematic because it puts the person, the do-gooder, above. It creates continued hierarchy. Therefore, there was no way, based on his philosophy, there was a disordered system in place, a disordered relationship, because I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. This is why service is incredibly problematic in our culture. This is why it is so important that if we want to go out there and change the world, and we must, we need to, we have to first be committed to changing that which is within ourselves that perpetuates the very separation we suggest that we want to see transformed. That's when it gets really messy. Why? Because that feels right. Like, I got money, let me give you the money. I have to be willing to dismantle my identity as being a good person to that of a whole person that includes faults and graces. That's the work. So sit up tall for a moment and close your eyes.